We all know there are a million different ways to make a living, but on this show, we are curious about those businesses that you might not know about. We're going to take a deep dive every week and talk to a successful person in their field to learn about how they got their start and how they continue to make it in their space. Join me and learn more about the business of. Welcome back to the business of, and today we are talking about the business of helicopters. We've got Andrew Hayden here from Azimuth Aviation.
Yep.
And we're going to learn a little bit more about helicopters. So you're a pilot.
I am.
And how did you decide to start your own company?
Ooh, that one probably started a long time ago. I think I've always wanted to be self-employed.
Okay.
So I've always wanted to work in, it was cars or planes, right? It was automotive or aviation. It ended up being aviation, and my career started in the repair of aircraft engines.
Oh.
And I moved from Ireland, which is home, to Scotland, where I worked in that field for a few years. And then on my 25th birthday, I got a 20-minute lesson in a helicopter, and that was 20 years ago in October.
Okay.
So I went to flight school, learned to fly, and during that process, I think I'd already figured out I wanted to be self-employed.
Okay.
So
and is that a normal thing for helicopter pilots to be self-employed, or?
No, I think I would probably be in the minority. My original intention had been to go back to Europe and maybe fly in the North Sea, that not knowing that, but it quickly transitioned. So I ended up in a previous life running a flight school.
Okay.
I had another business, and then in the most recent years, 3 years ago, coming up on 3 years ago, we started Azimuth.
Okay. And what made you decide to start Azimuth after having your flight school? And
so in my previous business, there was a lot of different parts to it, and the pandemic had a huge influence on our industry and our business. I had made the decision, when we made the decision to start Azimuth, okay, it was at the very start of a pandemic, but it gave me the chance to set up this while things were quiet, because it takes an awful lot to set this up. However, I knew at that point that I wanted to focus on a couple of different things, and there's two sides to Azimuth. One is utility operations, where we provide helicopter patrol services for the power companies.
Okay.
And the other side is what we're sitting in, which is, this is an Augusta 109, which is private transport for the people who but this means of transport.
And is it more on like an as-needed basis, where people kind of rent the helicopter for that?
So we are officially an on-demand air carrier. So I have an air carrier certificate, just like an airline does.
Oh.
I have the same rules as duty hours, pilot hours. My team has all of the same things. It's the same training requirements. I'm actually a check airman in this aircraft, which means I can effectively internally examine people to be pilots in this for the purpose of public transport. So yes, it's an on-demand air taxi, if you like.
Okay.
So you, Heather, could call us up and go, hey, Tuesday, I need to be in the city at 2 o'clock. I'm coming out of West Hampton. What time can I, are you available? What time? And et cetera, et cetera. And that's what we do.
And then the other side, providing for the power companies.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yes.
How did you get into that?
So interestingly, if you looked out the front of the helicopter, you see there's some power lines swinging over that.
Yes.
And there. Those are some of the transmission system in Connecticut. So that I have been doing for a very long time. That's a whole other part of the industry, which is low level, helmet, fire retardant gear, low and slow, a lot of training, a lot of cockpit protocol for communication, and we've got company observers on board. We may have a thermal camera under the aircraft recording all anything that might be overheating on a transmission system, and that is year-round work for me. So that's a bread and butter work. Okay. And then seasonally, this type of private transport tends to be from it starts in May and peaks, and then the bottom, peaks up through the summer and then October. So between those two revenue streams, we have a fairly busy order book for the whole year, and are looking to grow. Yeah.
Sounds like it. And tell me where the name Azimuth came from.
So
this is an interesting story.
Interestingly, yeah. So decided to start the company.
Yeah.
Hadn't quite figured out the name. And it was a group of friends and my business partner that we actually did end up, I think the first draft of this came on a napkin.
Was it a cocktail napkin?
I don't remember if it was a cocktail napkin. I'm not going to say that it wasn't a cocktail napkin. And then the word azimuth is a very nautical term, celestial navigation. So for example, the direction that a wind comes from is referred to as a wind azimuth. So that's where it came from. So we liked the name, and then we started messing around with some logos, and I had no logo finalized, but I had started to make passenger briefing cards, which we use to do the safety briefing as you would get on an airline.
Yep.
And those have to be done by, they have to be professionally made, so that they have the certain standards that those have to meet.
Sure.
And then the company that was making those for me started suggesting some logos. He's like, oh, I mean, this. And we sent him the draft of our little sketch that had been on a napkin or cocktail napkin. And he goes, I love that. I'll do the artwork for you. And it ended up being a rotor system with the direction and the company name. Cool. So yeah, it sort of, it was organic, and we love it. And I like, you know, it's a conversation piece because a lot of people do not know the word.
No.
But people in the nautical, the yachts, and navigation and pilots would all know that word.
People who are super into wind and the way its direction.
Yeah, exactly.
Those of us who are not.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we get asked that question a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Business of, and we are talking with Andrew Hayden of Azimuth Aviation, and
it's a mouthful.
It is. I can't say it like 10 times fast. I'm sure you can after so many years. But so tell us about a risk that you've taken that has worked out better than you anticipated.
I think taking the risk of starting a company when the world and our industry is in such a, you know, catastrophic decline, and getting through that initial period and being able to start to build a client base and enough revenue to support, you know, salaries and the maintenance and the marketing and the hangar and the insurance and the very high cost that we face, I think has worked out. And a lot of it, I think, is work, but there was some good fortune in there too with the timing.
And, you know, knowing, or the unknown of that, like, so it's worked out better than you anticipated. How did you work through some of those, like, challenges?
So in the setting up of a company and getting the air carrier certification, that was simply an amount of work that was known.
Okay.
It was how quickly could I get it accomplished, because I had to rely on the FAA certification team to get that all done. So a lot of that came down to, am I going to put in the hours? So I'm in, you know, at home, long days, writing manuals and getting training programs prepared and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, you know, just I guess it's just the workload.
Okay. Do you think that you were helped by the pandemic with things being, like, I don't want to say slower, but, you know, everybody was kind of like stuck at home, and there was...
Yes, I think so. So I had no significant cost base to try and set it up. The costs really come when you pull the trigger on signing a management agreement on an aircraft and starting to pay an insurance bill, and then putting the aircraft onto an air carrier certificate involves time and therefore money and inspections, and trying to get all that done in time to be available for the peak of private transportation season, which would be spring into the fall.
So you started this process in January
2020.
2020, and needed to be up and running by May, which you said is the start of
I had targeted for the private transportation May of the following year.
Oh.
Because to do a certificate, it can take a very, very, very long time. And of course the FAA at that time, with new certificates and everybody working remotely, that was a huge workload to try, because what would normally be in-person meetings and inspections were being done by Zoom, and passing manuals backwards and forwards and so on. So yeah, that was an unknown that I didn't know and didn't have control of.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So in the meantime, I was able to hit the ground running with the other side of the business, which is the utility operations, which I was able to do very quickly because it doesn't have the same certification standards.
Okay, that makes sense.
If that makes sense. I mean, you're getting too technical.
Was that one of the reasons why you decided to go into that side of the business, or was that always part of your plan?
It was. It's both. It was always part of the plan because I knew that other work could give us a baseline from which to start generating revenue straight away.
Okay.
And then plan that 12-month period to 18-month period to get the certification for the private transportation done and get an aircraft in place and crew trained and qualified, because it's initial and recurrent training that's required to be able to be ready for the start of a season.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so switching gears,
Yeah.
can you tell me about something that you took a risk on that didn't quite work out the way you wanted it to, and was more of a learning experience than you anticipated?
I think it's really not that things didn't work out, but they're just going to take a whole lot more time to get to.
Yeah.
So would it have been better if I had a client base and it was able to pick up very quickly so that we could ramp up more quickly? I just had no idea or ability to know how I was going to deal with that. So I'm just hoping to be able to get clients, to get people, because we didn't know when people were going to be comfortable to start to travel again.
Yeah.
And when they started to travel again, would it go back, or would they be wanting to do the same things that they were doing before, which for us would be New York City to the Hamptons, or people traveling into this corner of the country who maybe live in Florida in another time of the year, et cetera, not knowing that. And then just hoping it was going to come together. So I would like if we'd been able to get maybe some more, the team bigger, do this a little more quickly.
Yeah.
So it's not that it hasn't worked out,
Yeah.
it's that
It's just takes a little bit more time.
Yeah.
That
And
makes
then
sense.
the business then relies I still do a lot of the flying. So
Okay.
I'd like to grow a team so that we can get the team to a bigger size, so that we can have a better working schedule, because everybody works very hard. There's a lot of hours.
And how many helicopters do you have currently?
So the fleet is 3.
Okay.
We're one of the things that we do, and this is a side of the business that I would like to expand upon, is aircraft management. So we might not necessarily own the aircraft that we're operating. We'd manage them for a private owner, for example.
Okay.
So if there's an individual or a group of individuals who said, you know what, we use this type of service all the time.
Yeah.
We could get together, buy an aircraft, and hand it to someone who goes, yeah, don't worry, I have the training, the maintenance, the hangar, the insurance, I can arrange all that for you. This is what it's going to cost. This is how it's going to offset the cost for you.
Yeah.
And then the cost of ownership of an aircraft drops for them, because we're able to offset a lot of their cost, so that they can recuperate some of their investment.
Very cool.
Right. So that is
Yeah.
how I might like to grow the business, and because as somebody who might like to use private transportation service or might like to be an owner, there's a whole lot of unknowns, and they're like, ooh, that's a big ask. You don't know what you're really asking. So that's
Right.
another big portion of so this aircraft we're sitting in is actually a managed aircraft.
Ah, it's very nice.
So there we go. Yeah, it's very nice. It will get you we're currently at Stratford at the marina, and it will get us from here to Manhattan about 24 to 28 minutes.
That's a lot faster than a car, people.
We can take you from here to East Hampton, even going via noise abatement route, in about 28 minutes, something like that.
Wow.
Without wind, a run from Manhattan to the Hamptons, between 35 and 45 minutes, depending on where you're going. So it's for those people who that time saving is a huge factor for them.
Right. Time is money.
Then that is something. So we can do it. They can be just a client,
Yeah.
but they could also consider having an aircraft if they wanted to get into that. We can manage it for them as well.
Wow. Very cool.
Yeah, it's an interesting business. We work very hard.
Is there anybody else who's doing that in the space that you know of?
There are some, helicopters of different sizes. So
Yeah.
the aircraft we're sitting in is a twin-engine aircraft. It can be flown with one pilot, so we can offer it to you with one pilot or 2 pilots.
Okay.
But there are certain people who don't want to or can't, for insurance reasons, fly in an aircraft that has 1 engine. It needs 2. So we fall nicely into the middle of that with this aircraft that can seat 4 comfortably. It's actually got 5 seats back here, 5 side seat belts. But it's it's quick and it's fast for 4. And it's got decent luggage carrying capability. So there are other companies, of course, that do this. We would we're trying to put in place a service where really we can take care of the client in whatever capacity they would like us to. So yeah, there are. I think strategically for us, we're based this side of Manhattan.
Okay.
So having clientele that, and a client base that is either Manhattan or this side, we're going to be fairly cost effective compared to operators that might be in the other side of the city, right? Because there's less empty leg time.
Right. That
So
makes sense.
that's one of the great things about the location was a choice too. Based on the timing that it might take to do a lot of, to get to New York City, where we might be doing a lot of business, it's quick for us to get there. It's quick for us to get to the Hamptons. So we're doing these triangles. Yeah.
Smart. Very smart.
So, or lucky.
Well, or both,
Or both,
right?
or
That's what
both.
it takes
Yeah.
to be successful, is
Yeah.
both smarts and luck.
There we go.
I feel like. We're going to take another quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. We are back on the business of, and we have Andrew here from Azimuth Aviation. Oh my gosh, I said it right. So we are going to talk about a little bit more about where do you see the business going in the future?
Thankfully, I see that our industry is made and making a significant recovery now that I think we're hopefully at the back end of the world's troubles with the pandemic. So I'm hopeful, and we're putting a lot of work into trying to grow the business. I would like, obviously, to add aircraft to be able to add additional capability and service. But we are also trying to, and being present here at the Steel Point Yacht and Charter Show, we're actually connecting with other industries. So connecting the boating industry to aviation, it's great because boat owners, yacht owners who might be able to use the facilities of a marina like this to be able to have an aviation connection to get to their boat, to or from their boat. So we're working with other industries to try and make those connections and expand that way, as well as the traditional grow by growing our own client base. So that the two kind of feed together.
Very cool. Well, it has been a pleasure talking to you, and very exciting to sit in a helicopter for the first time for me.
Yeah.
Definitely not your
Not
first
in the
time.
air yet for you,
Not in
but-
the air. That's okay, eventually. But thank you so much for being on the business of, and we look forward to seeing how Azimuth grows in the future.
Thank you. Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it.